Hello, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful day. And today we will be discussing five question drill questions on the subject agricultural economics and marketing. So, simulan na natin. First question, sabi niya dito, a deflationary gap can be eliminated by decreasing investment, decreasing government spending, decreasing taxes, or decreasing autonomous consumption. The question is asking, paano daw natin maalis or how can we remove deflationary gap? And the option is, ang gagawin ba natin ay babawasan yung investment? Babawasan ba natin yung gastos ng gobyerno? That's letter B. Babawasan ba natin yung tax or babawasan natin yung autonomous consumption? Now, medyo foreign siguro yung mga terms dito, but the answer here is actually letter C. Okay? We can eliminate deflationary gap by decreasing the taxes. Pero bago ang lahat, let us first define what is a deflationary gap. So, macroeconomically speaking, kung tinitignan natin yung economics ng buong bansa, a deflationary gap is a situation kung saan yung aggregate demand or let's just say to simplify yung GDP ng ating bansa, yung gross domestic product, yung production ng isang bansa ay mas mababa kaysa doon sa kanyang production at full employment. So isipin nyo na lang na ang isang bansa mayroon niyang potential production given the particular resources na mayroon siya. Now, kapag mas mababa yung ating production, yung ating gross domestic product or yung ating aggregate demand kaysa doon sa ating potential production, nagkakaroon tayo ng tinatawag na deflationary gap. Or we can also term the deflationary gap as negative output gap. We are producing at a level that is less than our potential GDP. Okay? So, ang tanong, what makes up your GDP? Now, your GDP is technically made up of consumption plus investment plus government expenses plus net export. So kapag pinagsama-sama mo yung mga yan yung nagiging total production natin. So kapag mayroon kang deflationary gap, meaning in this particular area, you are producing below your potential GDP, so you're producing below. Ang gusto mong gawin, pataasin yung gross domestic product mo. And how do you do that? You need to shift your aggregate demand to the right. No? Para yung aggregate demand mo ay mag-shift sa right and magmumukha siyang ganito. Yan. Para mahihit niya ulit yung kanyang potential GDP. And how do we increase our aggregate demand or our GDP? We increase our GDP by increasing either consumption, investment, government spending, or net export. So yun yung way natin para i-increase ang gross domestic product. So isa-isahin natin yung mga choices kanina. Paano natin ma-increase yung ating gross domestic product para mag-shift siya sa right? Let's say the choice of decreasing investment. So nakita natin kanina na part of your GDP is investment. Kapag binawasan mo yung investment, mag-shift ba yung aggregate demand mo to the right? Well, of course not. In fact, kapag binawasan mo yung investment, yung aggregate demand mo, mag-shift siya sa left. And therefore, mas lalala yung deflationary gap. So, decreasing investment is not a good strategy to eliminate the deflationary gap. How about decreasing government spending? Hindi rin. Okay? Kasi kapag binawasan mo yung government spending, again, negative yung magiging effect niya sa yung gross domestic product. Yung shift ay hindi to the right, it will not increase your gross domestic product. Again, it will decrease it. So mag-shift ulit siya sa left and papalalain niya yung deflationary gap. Paano naman kapag binawasan mo yung autonomous consumption? So ano ba kasi yung autonomous consumption? Yan yung consumption ng mga citizen mo, okay? Autonomous consumption is the consumption of your citizen when income is zero. Now, ulitin ko, doon sa formula kanina, your gross domestic product is consist of consumption, investment. So your GDP is consist of consumption, investment, government spending, and net export. Kung babawasan mo yung autonomous consumption which falls under consumption, natural, ang gross domestic product mo bababa rin. Kasi binawasan mo yung consumption. So hindi siya magi-increase, mag-shift ulit siya sa left and papalalain niya yung deflationary gap. So ang GDP is directly related to consumption, investment, government expenses, and net export. By the way, net export is simply export minus import. Now, kapag tumataas yung consumption, investment, government expenses, and net export, tataas rin yung aggregate demand mo, tataas rin yung GDP mo. Pero kapag bumaba ang consumption, investment, government expenses, at net export, bababa rin sila. Ang tinatanong doon sa question, paano natin remove yung deflationary gap para tumaas yung ating gross domestic product? And ang sagot kanina ay ibaba natin yung tax. So nagtataka kayo, Sir, nasaan yung tax na yan doon sa composition ng ating gross domestic product? Tama? Well, ang effect ng tax is basically on consumption. So isipin mo na lang, kapag ang government natin ibinaba nila yung tax, ano sa tingin nyo ang mangyayari sa pera or income ng mga tao? Income-wise, tataas yung kanilang disposable income. Pag tumaas ang kanilang disposable income, ano kaya sa tingin nyo ang mangyayari sa kanilang expenditure, sa kanilang spending behavior? Tataas rin ang kanilang spending behavior, therefore tataas ang kanilang consumption. So yun yung hinahanap natin. Kapag tumaas ang kanilang consumption, edi yung ating aggregate demand ay mag-shift to the right, mag-i-increase, and therefore eliminating now the deflationary gap. Kaya ang tamang sagot for this question, the things that we can do to eliminate deflationary gap is to decrease our tax, kasi kapag dinecrease natin yung ating tax, maitataas natin yung consumption. Okay? So that is the principle behind that question. Next one. At a lower price, one can afford more of the good without giving up any alternative good is true for letter A, substitution effect, income effect, neither A nor B, or letter D, all of the above. So let's just assume for a while na mayroon tamang sagot. So aalisin natin yung letter C and letter D dito sa option. And we are now left with A and B. Ano kaya sa dalawa na yan? So 50-50 na ang chances ang tamang sagot. Now, for this specific question, okay, wherein it discusses a situation kung saan at a lower price, one can afford more of a good without giving up any alternative good, ang dinidescribe dyan na situation is called your income effect. Now, ano ba kasi itong substitution effect and income effect na ito? Right? Now, the substitution effect and income effect is related, okay? So these are the effect, or let's say the rationale behind the law of demand. So ano ba kasi ang law of demand? Law of demand simply states na kapag ang presyo ay bumababa, ang quantity demanded ay tumataas. Okay? Kapag ang presyo ay bumababa, ang quantity demanded ay tumataas. Kapag ang presyo naman ay tumataas, ang quantity demanded ay bumababa. So yan yung law of demand. And ano yung explanation behind this principle? Yun yung sinasagot ng substitution effect and income effect. Bakit ba nangyayari yung law of demand kung saan inverse ang relationship ng price at quantity demanded? Yun ang sinasagot ng substitution effect and income effect. So unahin natin, ano yung substitution effect? Okay? Now, substitution effect simply means kapag ang presyo ng iyong bilihin, let's say nagtitinda ka ng pandesal, tumaas ang presyo ng pandesal mo, yung mga buyers, maghahanap yan ng cheaper na pandesal. Okay? So anong mangyayari kapag yung mga buyers mo naghanap ng cheaper na pandesal? Hindi ngayon sila bibili ng pandesal sa'yo, therefore yung quantity demand mo ay babagsak. Kaya kapag mataas ang presyo mo, kapag mataas ang price mo, ang quantity demand mo naman ay pababa. Now the opposite is true. Kapag ang presyo ng iyong pandesal ay bumaba, mapapansin mo, tataas ang iyong quantity demand. Bakit? Kasi mapapansin ng mga buyers na, uy, mababa yung pandesal na benta mo. So they will substitute yung pandesal mo doon sa current na pandesal na kanilang binibili. So tatakbo sila away from the pandesal na binibili nila na una and then lilipat ngayon sila sa pandesal mo. So therefore, ang quantity demand ay aakyat. So yan yung sinasabi ng substitution effect kung bakit nangyayari yung inverse relationship of the law of demand. Yung income effect naman, okay? Yan naman yung situation kung saan, okay? Kapag bumaba ang presyo mo, kapag bumaba ang presyo mo, pakiramdam ng mga consumers, sila ay yumaman. Okay? Let's say, ceteris paribus, yung pandesal mo from 3 pesos naging piso, parehas lang yung income nila, pero dahil piso na lang yung pandesal mo, yung tres na dating, let's say, dati, okay, mag-backtrack tayo. Let's say, ang pandesal mo dati is 3 pesos. Okay, so 3 pesos per piece. Ngayon, ang nangyari, yung pandesal mo naging piso per piece. Sabihin natin na yung consumer mo, parehas lang yung kanyang income. Okay? Ang income niya, let's say, is 30 pesos. Ang budget niya ay 30 pesos pambili ng pandesal. Yung 30 pesos doon sa initial price, ilan lang yung mabibili niya? 10 pandesal lang. Tama? Pero dahil bumaba ang presyo, pakiramdam niya siya ay mas mayaman. Okay? So, piso na yung pandesal. So, ilan na yung mabibili niyang pandesal sa halagang piso per piece? 30 pieces na. Okay. So, yan yung rationale behind kung bakit kapag bumaba ang presyo, tumataas ang quantity demanded. And the same is true, opposite naman, right? Kapag tumaas ang presyo, yung purchasing power ng iyong buyer or ng iyong client ay bumababa. So let's say from piso, nakakabili siya ng 30 pieces. Nagtaas ka ng presyo, ginawa mong 3. Yung 30 pieces na yon sa halagang 30 pesos, na budget niya, 10 piraso lang yung mabibili. Yun naman yung effect ng income effect kapag tumataas yung presyo. So basically, these two, substitution effect and income effect, are situations or models or theories that explains why the law of demand is happening. Now, in relation to this, yung next question natin, which is nabanggit ko actually, yung sagot. Right? Sabi dito sa next question, the amount of goods and services that can be bought with a given income and prices of commodity. So ano kaya ang tawag mo doon? We are looking at the amount of goods, the amount of products na pwedeng bilhin given a particular income and price. Ang tawag mo ba doon ay total revenue, sales, purchasing power, or profit? Kung nakikinig kayo sa akin kanina, nabanggit ko na kapag tumataas ang presyo, given the same income, so we're now looking at income and price there, kapag tumataas ang presyo given the same income, bumababa ang purchasing power and vice versa. So ang sagot po dito ay purchasing power. So what is purchasing power? Yun yung mahalagang sagutin. Now, purchasing power is the amount of all the products that you can buy given two variables. Ano yung variables na yan? Income and prices. So ano yung relationship ng income at price sa purchasing power? Now, ceteris paribus, kapag ang income mo ay tumaas, so kapag ang income mo tumaas, given the same price, ang purchasing power mo ay tataas rin, and vice versa. Okay? So, given na yung income mo tumaas, tapos parehas lang yung presyo, kapag tumaas ang income mo, tataas rin yung purchasing power mo. And vice versa. Kapag bumaba yung income mo, bababa rin natural yung iyong purchasing power. How about price of commodity? Inverse naman ang relationship. Kapag ang price of commodity tumaas, ceteris paribus, ibig sabihin parehas yung income, so tumaas ang prices ng commodity, ceteris paribus, ang purchasing power mo ay bababa naman, and vice versa. Diba? Kapag mas nagmahal yung produkto, mas marami kang pera na kailangan para pambili doon sa produkto na yun, kaya bumababa yung purchasing power mo. Kapag naman yung produkto ay nagmura, okay, it becomes less cheaper, tumataas yung purchasing power mo kasi you can buy more of that particular good kahit na parehas pa yung income mo. So paano naman, sir, kapag nagbago yung price at saka income? Now, kapag nagbago yung price at saka income, depende doon sa change ng dalawang variable na to. For example, let's say, yung income mo tumaas ng 10%, right? Pero nagkaroon ng inflation na 12%. Kapag ganyan ang senaryo, tumaas ba or bumaba yung purchasing power mo? So what happened is, bumaba yung purchasing power mo. Why? Kasi mas mataas yung effect ng price, yung inflation, kaysa doon sa iyong increase in income. Kapag naman, let's say yung income mo, tumaas ng 15%, tumaas ng 15% yung income mo, in relation to the inflation na 12%, then yung purchasing power mo ay umakyat pa rin. So purchasing power umakyat. Why? Because the change in your income, the increased change in your income is greater than the increase in inflation. Yun. So magkakatalo lang doon sa value kapag kinompare na natin yung income and prices. Doon magkakatalo yung effect nila sa purchasing power. So ano-ano naman yung mga choices na ating nakita naman kanina? Like for example, ano yung total revenue natin? Total revenue simply refers to the total amount of money that a business will earn from selling its products. Okay? So in formula, ang total revenue mo is yung presyo ng produkto at kung magkano at kung ilan yung nabenta. Sa Tagalog, ang total revenue is also called benta. Kasi your total revenue kasi is also called your sales. Therefore, kapag pare-parehas lang yung price, no? Kapag constant yung price at tumataas yung quantity, ang total revenue mo ay increasing lang yan indefinitely. So habang tumataas yung quantity, ang total revenue ay tumataas lang yan. Ceteris paribus, ibig sabihin parehas yung price, pare-parehas yung presyo. Okay? So that's total revenue. It's price times quantity. How about yung isang concept kanina na profit? Profit, yan sa Tagalog naman ay yung ating kita. In terms of formula, your profit is total revenue and then ima-minus mo lang yung tinatawag nating total cost or total expenses. Now, in the short run, ang total cost mo is composed of yung fixed cost, yung mga cost na hindi nagbabago, and total variable cost or yung mga cost na nagbabago habang nagdadagdag ka or nagbabawas ka ng output. Ngayon, in the long run naman, wala na po tayong total fixed cost and total variable cost kasi in the long run, lahat po ay puro variable. So yan naman yung konsepto ng profit. So basically, profit is just total revenue, so yung sales mo minus lahat-lahat ng cost. Okay? Next question. Payments to international transactions can be carried out through the use of the following instruments except 1. So kapag daw you are transacting internationally, yung mga options daw dito ay mga pamamaraan para makapagbayad ng transaction internationally except for 1 payment option. Ano kaya yung payment option na hindi ginagamit for international transaction? Personal check ba? Cable or telegraphic transfers? Bank drafts or letters of credit? Siyempre, kapag international yan, ang gusto natin mangyari, nasi-secure yung transaction. We make sure na nare-receive natin yung bayad, for example, or nakakapagbayad tayo ng maayos, right? Kasi kapag international transaction at nagkaroon ng hindi magandang dealings kung saan hindi na-receive nung exporter yung bayad nung kanyang produkto, magkakaroon ng trust issues dyan. So kailangan natin ng secure ways kung saan both of the party, the exporter and the importer, will get what they deserve. So si exporter marireceive niya yung pera niya and si importer marireceive niya yung goods and services na kanyang in-order. So ang tamang sagot dyan, something that is not used in international trading or international transaction is personal check. Okay? Now isa-isahin natin yung B, C, and D. Ano ba tong mga terms na to and why they are used in international transactions. Unahin natin yung cable or telegraphic transfers. Now, cable or telegraphic transfers is basically just the name itself, sending money electronically, okay? From a bank, from your bank, dito sa Pilipinas, for example, to someone else's bank in another country. Ngayon, dahil electronic yung way ng yung way ng transporting or yung way ng exchange between the cash, mabilisan din ito, okay? And madalas gumagamit sila ng secure system para i-communicate kung ano yung ipapadala ni Bank A, for example, kung yan ay galing sa bansa mo, papunta kay Bank B, kapag galing yan sa bangko ng isang foreigner. So if you're going to send money from the Philippines, or yes, from the Philippines, going to a business in the US, for example, pwede mo siyang i-electronic transfer, and ang tawag doon, cable or telegraphic transfers. Ano naman yung tinatawag nating bank draft? Na yung bank draft mo, yan ay parang cheque. Okay? Pero instead of you writing the check, ang magsusulat ng cheque is yung bangko, and igagaranti ng bangko na may laman and may makukuha doon sa cheque na yon. So this is safer. Kasi ang naggagaranti na may makukuha ka is hindi yung katransact mo, but rather yung bank. Okay? The bank will guarantee that the check will not bounce. Okay? So maipapalit at maipapalit mo yan. Walang problema. So this is also a secure way for international transactions. Kasi kapag nag-issue sila ng bank draft, alam mo na maipapalit at maipapalit yan. Kasi ang nag-issue niyan is yung bangko. O let's say nag-cancel ng order. Paano yan maibabalik doon sa sender ng pera? Kapag nag-cancel ng order, hindi rin basta-basta maibalik yan. Ang mangyayari, so most of the time, ano ang mangyayari? Dapat i-encash ni receiver nung bank draft yung pera, and then sa kanya ulit pabalik. Sa kanya ipupunta pabalik kay sender, sa initial sender of that bank draft. So yan naman yung konsepto ng bank draft. Ano naman yung tinatawag nating letter of credit? Now, a letter of credit is simply a letter, okay? So it's parang promissory note, kumbaga. It is a letter from your bank na babayaran na you will pay someone, okay? Pero kung sakaling wala kang pera, the bank will actually cover for that payment. So of course, syempre may transaction din kayo within the bank na kailangan mong bayaran si bangko. Pero again, mas secure ulit to. Kasi ang sinasabi ng letter na to, si A, okay, ay magbabayad kay B for sure. At kung sakaling hindi pa ready yung pera kay A, iso-shoulder ni bank yung gastos muna para mabayaran si B. Okay? But the letter of credit usually has a clause kung saan ang payment ay mangyayari lamang kapag yung goods ay na-receive. Okay? Ang payment ay mangyayari lamang kapag yung goods na in-order mo ay na-receive. So let's say, for example, You are a Filipino importer, so gusto mong bumili ng rice galing sa Thailand. Okay? So meron kang Thailand supplier, siya si B. Right? Now, ang gagawin mo, kakausapin mo yung bangko mo, and then papa-issue mo yung bangko mo, magbigay nga kayo ng letter of credit kay B na nagsasabi na ipinapangako kong babayaran ko siya kapag dumating yung bigas sa akin. So mag-i-issue ngayon sila ng letter kay B, that is the letter of credit now, and then makikita yan ni B, oh, the letter looks legit, okay? And secure naman, babayaran daw ako ng bangko kung sakaling, kung basta so long as nabigay ko yung aking bigas na ipinangako kay A. So ibibigay niya yung bigas kay A, and once na-receive ni A, pwede na niyang i-encash, okay, yung letter of credit na yon to a particular bank in his or her country. So yan naman yung letter of credit. Again, pagdating sa international transaction, ang gusto natin secure. So gusto natin sigurado. Alright? Kaya ayaw natin ang personal check. Hindi natin madalas ginagamit yan. Why? Because of the following disadvantages. It takes too long to clear between countries. Oh, bakit? Kasi iba-iba naman yung bangko ng iba't ibang mga bansa. So kapag ililipat mo yung check mo doon sa ibang bansa, kakaroon talaga ng aberya yan. It might take several weeks to confirm and verify kung tama yung check. At the same time, there is a risk na baka yung check mo ay tumalbog. Walang laman. Ayaw natin yan. Gusto natin sa international transaction, sigurado. Kasi nga kapag tumalbog yung cheque, ang hirap po niyang habulin. Kasi international yung transaction nyo, hindi lang naman local. And of course, meron din yung risk na baka mawala yung cheque or baka ma-forge. Okay? Ma-forge yung pirma, etc. and mapunta sa ibang tao yung pera. So we do not use personal check for international transactions. We use the three. Okay? Wire transfer, tama, cable or telegraphic transfers, bank drafts, and letters of credit. Lastly, this is a form of business organization created by the operation of law with not less than 5 and not more than 5 members. So ito isang form of business kung saan it is created by law, and when it is created, kailangan niya ng not less than 5 members but not more than 15 members. So 5 to 15 members ang kailangan para ma-form yung business na to. Ano ang tawag sa form of business na yan? Cooperative, partnership, sole proprietorship, or corporation. The correct answer is corporation. Okay? What is a corporation? A corporation is a legal entity that is created by law, and this exists independently of its owners. Right? So ang corporation, nagiging separate entity siya from its shareholders. Yes, may mga investors yung corporation, pero the corporation itself ay may sariling identity in relation to law. Okay? Now, para makagawa ng isang corporation, you need at least 5 to 15 members. So yung 5 to 15 members na yun, they are also called your incorporators, and kailangan sila in order to establish the corporate business. As I was saying earlier on, ang corporation ay may separate legal entity. So meron siyang legal identity, okay? Which is separate from your shareholders. So ibig sabihin yan, yung corporation na to can enter contracts, pwede siyang isue, okay? Pwede siyang mang-sue, okay? Pwede siyang kasuhan, pwede rin siyang mangkaso, pwede siyang mag-own ng assets, and pwede rin siyang mag-incur ng liability. Okay? So yan yung karakteristik ng isang corporation. How about the other forms of business na nabanggit doon sa option kanina? Like for example, your cooperative. Now, cooperative is also a legal entity, but it is formed by individuals who voluntarily come together to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs. Now, in a cooperative, the number of members para magpasimula ka ng cooperative could be, or typically, it is more than 15. And membership can be open voluntarily, although may mga nakasaad sa kanilang policies as to who can be a member of the co-op. Okay? Now, co-ops, they are run based on democratic principles, and each member has equal voting power regardless of the amount that they will invest, as opposed to corporation kung saan kapag mas mataas yung share mo, mas mataas yung power mo doon sa corporation. Ano naman yung partnership? Now, partnership is again a business form, a form of business kung saan two or more individuals will create a formal arrangement na magtatayo sila ng negosyo. Now, ibig sabihin yan, they will be sharing the profit kapag kumita yung negosyo and they will be incurring the loss kapag kumita yung kapag nalugi naman yung negosyo. But this time around, the partnership, the business partnership is not a legal entity as compared to the corporation. It is not a separate legal entity, meaning yung ating partners, they are personally responsible for debts and obligations of the business. Okay. Kanina, sa corporation pala, medyo limitado yung liability ng corporation kasi nga separate legal entity siya. Right? So separate legal entity siya kaya limited yung kanyang liability. Ibig sabihin yan, yung ating mga shareholders, yung shareholders ng corporation, they are liable only to the amount of their investment dun sa corporation. But this means that if ang ibig sabihin yan, kapag yung corporation ay nagkautang or nagkaroon ng legal issues, yung personal assets of the shareholders na hindi part ng corporation pwedeng maprotektahan. Sa partnership, hindi po. Okay? Dahil walang separate legal entity na negosyo, kung ano yung pagmamayari or asset ni partner, kung nalugi yung negosyo, ay ililiquidate po yan. So that's a partnership. The last form of business is what we call a sole proprietorship. Ibig sabihin lang yan, meron kang isang negosyo and meron kang isang individual na may-ari ng negosyo na yon. Yan yung pinakasimpleng form ng business organization. The owner has full control over the business and all of the profits, all of the losses, everything is the owner's responsibility. Okay? So unlimited liability din yung ating owner dyan. Meaning kapag nalugi yung kumpanya or kapag nagkaroon ng legal issues, siya ay pwedeng habulin.